Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabant. Alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are continuing our NBA season preview content with our Central Division predictions. We are already through 2/3 of the NBA divisions, Logan. This is our second to last division preview, so if you have missed all the others, go ahead and check those out if you want. But we're on to the Central today, Logan. So as always, let's start from the top. Who do you have winning this division?
Pretty clearly my favorite in this division and in the conference. I have the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I have them winning 58 games, and yet I'm sitting here wondering if that's not enough. I really think Cleveland's got a legitimate shot to win 60 this year, and I think they are head and shoulders, man. They are top of the mountain right now, by far. There's a pretty big gap for me between Cleveland and the second team in the conference.
I agree. They are my clear, strong favorite to win the East. I do have them winning 60 games as my one seed. Obviously, they won 64 last year. They had a top 20 net rating in NBA history in the regular season, and they were pretty damn healthy, but also they've added more talent now when you consider they're going to have DeAndre Hunter for a full season. Some of their supporting pieces weren't actually super healthy throughout the year. It was really the big four where you got 70-plus games out of all of those guys, and that is good health luck. But I just think this team is still far more talented than everybody else in the conference, and certainly by far in the division. So why is it, Logan, that you view them as the favorite in the East?
It's the immense amount of talent that Cleveland has and the two-way ceiling that I think this team can reach with their stars. They had a great season last year. They were the best offense in the NBA. They scored the 8th most points by a team in NBA history, which is just a crazy fact. They were the only team in the NBA with 3 All-Stars, and they brought home the Coach of the Year and the Defensive Player of the Year. And so a lot of my confidence in Cleveland comes from the fact that they have basically 4 all-star caliber talents on this basketball team. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are the primary reasons this offense was so good last season, and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are the primary reason why the defense was so solid. It's just it's a pretty balanced attack, and a big part of the reason why they were so much more successful last season was the leap that Evan Mobley took as a creator from the perimeter and just as an offensive player in general. He shot 37% from behind the arc. He averaged 18.5 points per game and 3 assists per game. Both were career highs. And we saw Mobley also post a career high in drives per game, where I think that he could even get better there. And that's why I wonder if I'm underselling Cleveland in terms of their win total. Like, if Mobley takes another leap and gets even better, which is wholeheartedly on the table. Like, Mobley is so immensely talented and looked so much more confident last year, handling the ball, running pick and roll. Like, it just opens up a new dimension, right? If he becomes an even more special over-the-top shot maker, right, from behind the arc and maybe the mid-range. If he becomes more aggressive getting downhill, a better mismatch attacker, a better post scorer, like, what little nuggets is Evan Mobley going to add to his game? It could, it could just have big ripple effects and make this offense that much better. And again, it really is the balance, man. I think Garland and Mitchell are the best offensive backcourt in the game. So even if Mobley doesn't take that leap, I still think this is going to be one of the best offenses in all of basketball. Beyond that, I do like the depth. Now, I don't know if I like the depth more than – I think I like the depth more than last season. I mean, they lose Ty Jerome, which I do consider to be a pretty big loss. Yeah. I guess the only thing that I'm nervous about, Carson, with the depth is the injuries. That's really my only concern with this team. Just with the fact that Garland is recovering from a left big toe surgery. Max Strus is recovering from that Jones fracture. The Cavs have basically said that Lonzo is not going to play in back-to-backs this season, and he's going to be basically capped at 20 minutes a night. So depth and injury luck would be my only concerns with this team, but they have such a talented starting five, so much talent throughout this team, and I think they are just head and shoulders the best two-way team in the conference. I look at the other teams that are in competition with them. The Knicks just get lapped defensively. Orlando, I think, gets lapped offensively. Like, Cleveland, to me, is by far the best two-way team in the conference. And so I think 60 wins is on the table, man. I think they could I think they should have the second-best record in the NBA this season, only to OKC.
They did it last year. I don't know why they wouldn't be able to do it again. And they are just straight up the most talented team in the conference. And the formula that they have built off of their big four, but also with the supporting pieces on this roster, it's really elite. And you talk about balance. I agree they definitely have the highest two-way ceiling of any team in the Eastern Conference. But I do think that pretty clearly what makes this team a legitimate title threat is the offense. Defensively, yeah, they can be pretty good, but that is the side where they're going to have to be maybe scrambling to find some answers in some of these really high-stakes matchups against great teams, and that's the side of the ball where they could be exploited. They could run into some issues. Offensively, they're absolutely fantastic. They are definitely my second favorite offense in the NBA, only to Denver. And last year, they were statistically the best offense in basketball. Not just that, regular season, they had the 9th best relative offensive rating of any team this century. So they were head and shoulders above the league. And then in the playoffs, they still posted the number 1 offensive rating in the postseason. Now, I would say Indiana was definitely the best playoff offense. They sustained it for multiple series, and like the Cavs just absolutely lit up a shitty Heat team in the first round, put up crazy offensive numbers. But my point is the offense really is reliably elite here, and they've got 2 elite guard creators. There is not a better offensive backcourt in basketball right now than Mitchell and Garland when you're just talking about 2 guys who can propel you to elite offensive results when they're on the floor with or without the other. They've got 2 awesome play finishing bigs in Mobley and Allen, and both of whom are versatile in their own ways, have good playmaking feel, especially with Mobley. Now you're talking about real versatility with his handling, his playmaking, his ability to push and transition. You've got elite shooting. This team was top 3 last season in both threes made and 3-point percentage. That is absolutely a product of the pull-up shooting of Garland and Mitchell, but also they've got dudes who are just lights out off the catch. If it's DeAndre Hunter, if it's Sam Merrill, Max Strus, I think is one of the best shooting role players in basketball and just a really underrated offensive player overall. Hopefully he does get back and fully healthy relatively soon in the season. I think he's going to miss at least a month, but he's a really nice offensive supporting piece for them. So they just check so many boxes. They're very well coached. They've got great spacing concepts. I really like their approach to offense stylistically. They've got like this super avant-garde revolutionary pick and roll attack that was the best in basketball last year. So they've got all this talent in their starting lineup that complements each other so well. And then they do still have great depth. The Ty Jerome loss is unfortunate because he was just another awesome guard creator for them in the regular season. Obviously, not nearly at the level of a Garland or a Mitchell, but just in terms of shredding bench units, he was as good as any bench guard offensively in basketball. They lose him. However, Lonzo, if he can stay healthy, is an even better fit here because of what he brings defensively, because of what he brings off ball, his playmaking feel. He's not the creator that Ty Jerome is, but he's the more complete player who could fill more of a need for this team when it comes to lineup versatility. I don't know that he'll be healthy. It's a long shot to bet on that, but nevertheless, they've got him now. The totality of wings that they have is better than it was overall last year because they didn't have Hunter until the trade deadline. Now they have him. They have Strus. They have Dean Wade, who gives them a bigger forward, more of a defensive slant with him. Even like if you look at the big situation, basically you get to the playoffs the last couple years, it's been 48 minutes of Allen or Mobley on the floor. You can go double big. You can go Mobley at the 5. You can go Allen at the 5 without Mobley. And I still think that's overwhelmingly what it's going to be, but Larry Nance Jr. is like a third big, the likes of which they haven't had. They have been so reliant on those 2 bigs. Now their depth has improved even there. So they've really got it all. And offensively, I'm as confident in them as anybody. Their ability to actually go out and win the NBA title this year, if they can do that, is going to hinge on them being like the best offense in basketball, which is definitely possible, but then being a pretty damn good defense. And they have the personnel to do that. They have their dual rim protector look, obviously. That's their strength defensively. They have some solid personnel on the wings. And overall, they were 8th in defensive rating last year. But they did slip on that side of the ball as the year went along. Part of that was effort, I would say. But in the playoffs against a team like the Pacers, they just didn't have the answers that they needed defensively. And Jared Allen had his issues in the postseason when it came to anchoring the defensive glass, when it came to just his overall defensive IQ, positioning, and he got exploited in space. So his mobility was tested, and that was an issue for them. And then Darius Garland is always the guy you're going to look at defensively, and the ultimate example of this last year, it ended up not being a matchup we saw in the playoffs, but you go up against an offense like the Boston Celtics, and they are just relentlessly targeting him, bringing him into every action. They've got bigger, more athletic wings who can just bully him. And he's either forcing the defense to bring help because he can't guard these guys on an island, and then it's an easy kick-out pass to an open shooter somewhere else, or these guys are just bullying him and scoring one-on-one too easily. So that's the concern. Garland, the small backcourt. And I do worry about that with Cleveland when it comes to them reaching their ultimate ceiling. But where I do feel more encouraged than last year is in the fact that now I think they have a little bit more lineup versatility. Like, if you are having a rough defensive series from a Jared Allen, okay, now you can go with a look where it's like Mitchell, Lonzo, Strus, Hunter Mobley, if you want to get Garland off the floor because he's really struggling defensively. Or you can get Dean Wade in there, because if he's hitting his shots, he's a really good role player because he's a very good defender. And there you have speed defensively with Mobley at the 5. You have versatility with rangy wings. You have a legitimate high-end point of attack defender in Lonzo Ball that this team didn't have, a guy who can also switch up and guard bigger players. Donovan Mitchell can be a fine defender with his length and athleticism at the position. And so you can find a way to get those liabilities off the floor a bit more than you could last year. Nevertheless, the challenge with this team is, yeah, you can find answers defensively taking Garland off the floor, but your superpower is what you can do offensively. And Garland is a massive, massive part of that. So when you take him off the floor, you definitely lose some potency there, and you lose the aspect of having two of these elite guard creators. So it's not a perfect formula, and I do worry about them being a little bit too flawed defensively, a little bit too lopsided on offense, like when you hold them up against the Thunder, who is ultimately who they have to beat, a team that is just so ridiculously airtight defensively, one of the best we've ever seen there, and they are able to still engineer really good offense with this defensively slanted personnel because they have an offensive engine like Shea, and they have potential to be a better offense this year than last year, the Thunder do, especially come playoffs, but that's OKC. When you compare the Cavs to everybody else in the East, they just have more weapons, they have more answers, they have more strengths than anybody else in the conference, and their margin is just way greater. I think about the fundamental cracks at the foundation with a team like New York, who you would view as the biggest threat to them. Just the fact that they don't even have the kind of answers or talent defensively that the Cavs do, and they also don't have the sort of like seamless overall offensive formula that the Cavs do when it comes to everybody being a threat with the ball, everybody being able to do something at a clear positive level offensively. Their margin's just greater. Like, there's a reason they won 64 games last year, and I understand there are people who want to write off the Cavs and say they're frauds and say that they won't be able to do it in the playoffs. Look, the Pacers were a great team last year. Straight up, there is not another team of that caliber in the East this year that the Cavs could face, with the Pacers gone, with the Celtics of the last couple years now out of the picture. And also, although the Pacers were better than the Cavs in that series, there's just no way around that. The Cavs also got absolutely fucked by injuries in the playoffs. Mobley getting banged up, DeAndre Hunter getting banged up, Darius Garland most notably totally fucking up his toe, and that's still an ongoing recovery now. He could barely move in the playoffs. Like, that was seriously unfortunate for them, and I think people overlooked just how significant that was a little bit too much. So I'm setting the bar super high. Like, I view the Cavs as such a strong favorite in this conference that I will be disappointed if they don't win the East. Honestly, I don't know if I can say this, but my confidence in them making it out of the East might be even higher than my confidence in the Thunder making it out of the West, just because the competition for the Thunder in the West is that much harder. The Thunder are clearly my title favorite, the best team in basketball, but they just have to go through much more of a gauntlet. The Cavs really don't to get to the finals. So I still have them below OKC and Denver in my overall title hierarchy, but I have them above everybody else.
I can't make any big declarations about either of the teams just yet. I still do feel like let me pick my words carefully here, because I know you're passionate about Cleveland. I would also be disappointed by Cleveland if they didn't win the East. That being said, I wouldn't go that far because I am really concerned about the injuries. Just with the fact that they've gotten back-to-back postseasons now, they have been injury-riddled. The fact that Garland is recovering from a surgery, Max Strus is recovering from a surgery, I think both of them are imperative to a title run. Lonzo does make a meaningful difference to me in terms of an upgrade for this team in what they need. I get some of the raw percentages offensively are really disappointing. He shot 36% from the field, 34% from deep. He had a true shooting percentage of 52%. So that's bad. The Bulls were 9.2 points in terms of net rating better with Lonzo on the court. He improved their defense by 7.2 points per 100 possessions. So, even if he's not super impactful as a scorer in terms of what this team needs as a connective asset, as a versatile defender, a rebounder, and a playmaker, if Lonzo can stay healthy, and again, that is a massive, massive if, he makes a real difference for me. But like I said, man, I'm going to come back to injuries. It's not about personnel. If the Cavaliers are healthy going into the playoffs, I will be gobsmacked if they don't win the East. But the injury concerns are really major to me, and I can't just wipe that away. So I still do feel like I think the East is open. I think the Cavs have one injury. They're missing one guy. I think they're vulnerable.
They are better equipped to overcome missing one guy than anybody else, though. Like, when you think about what they can still put together, okay, even if a Garland does get hurt, obviously that sucks. It takes them down a peg. But still, with Donovan Mitchell, with all the shooting and play finishing around him, they can be a great offense, and they'll be a better defense without Garland. If they lose a Jared Allen, fine. We'll just go Mobley at the 5 more. And again, now they do have an actual backup center in Larry Nance, and that gives them more speed defensively. Offensively, I mean, they'll be just as great with more shooting now with Mobley really thriving offensively at the 5. That's where he's at his best. Like, I agree with you. It's fair to point out injuries as a concern. But if you compare, like, the cost of the Cavs losing one of their big 4 to any of these other teams losing one of their absolute core players, I do think Cleveland is better equipped to recover from it because they've got 2 dynamic offensive guards. They've got 2 really good bigs. Like, they have security at both of those positions with a really good player, and they have enough lineup versatility and mix and match options where they can survive it. Lonzo, though, when we talk about injury concerns, it literally doesn't get bigger. I mean, the guy's played 35 games in 3 years. He's played 70 games in the last 4 years. So to expect him to play more than half the season, to expect him to play in the playoffs, like, you could argue that that's just straight up fantasy. So I agree that he is a great fit for this basketball team, and he would give them a different look come playoffs that I think would be super valuable. I just think Lonzo is a playoff player when you think about his skill set, the defensive versatility, the offensive IQ, the shooting ability off the catch, the ability to push pace, make plays in transition. Also, you mentioned, like, I don't even think Lonzo's field goal percentage is worth bringing up because it's basically his 3-point percentage. Like 90% of his shots at this point are threes, and you understand that's what you're getting, and that really works when he's a complementary player alongside a dynamic guard creator like a Mitchell or a Garland, and he can cover up some for those guys defensively. He puts them over the top. They'd still be my favorite without him come playoffs in the East, but the margin would be a little bit smaller. So he's absolutely a key I'm looking at for this team. And then you mentioned this earlier too, Evan Mobley. Like, can he even take another little step forward this year? Because last year he was significantly improved offensively. And I was so impressed by his ball handling and his shooting. And by the way, that really held up in the playoffs in an impressive way too. His ability to take 4 threes a game, knock down some of those shots against contests, make 45% of his threes. It's a small sample size. It's only 8 games, but that's a real test of these young bigs, right? Like, is the shooting improvement fake? Are you a regular season 37% 3-point shooter? Or are you a playoff guy who can actually maintain that volume and efficiency? And the fact that Mobley did that to me was encouraging. And with how much he improved last year alone, like, could he improve a little bit more? I think that's worth monitoring. And his physical development, adding strength last year, becoming more effective as a mismatch attacker. That's something you totally expect to improve year over year with a young big. You know, now we've got Wemby going through people, sending them 5 feet backwards as they take a bump and dunking on them. Like, this is what happens. You add to your frame, and I think there's a little bit potential for him to be a bit more effective there this year as well. And I will look at his ability to handle under pressure as a key for this season. That's an area where in the playoffs, I do think he got a little bit more overwhelmed. He was a little bit more limited in his ability to create, just because regular season, you're not going to deal with the same level of ball pressure, physicality. It's going to be more comfortable for you getting into your actions, running inverted pick and roll as a big man. Teams are going to definitely stress you a lot more in the playoffs and see if you can really do that. And I thought Mobley felt that in the playoffs this past year. So does he improve a bit there? And I do look at the mismatch attacking. Part of that is physicality out of the post where he's improved. Another part of it is just like his touch from short range is just okay. So can that improve a little bit to where these hooks are now 50% shot? Some of these little touch shots in the lane out of the paint are just a bit more efficient for him. And maybe we will look at that 3-point volume too and say, okay, could that even go up a little bit? So I would say all of these improvements on the margins are possible. Evan Mobley isn't going to come out next year and look like a totally different player, but if he just gets a little bit better in all these areas that he got noticeably better last year, which again is a reasonable trajectory to expect from a 24-year-old young big improving at the rate that he's improving, if we see those sort of marginal improvements across the board, like top 10 player Evan Mobley is in the cards for this year. I don't know if I will predict it, but I'll tell you what, he will be damn close at the very least. He will be knocking on the door of those conversations, and I do believe with his elite defensive impact, he should flat out be their best player by the end of the year. And that's huge determining the Cavs ceiling. If Mobley becomes a guy who can go out there and give you 21, 10, and 5 with pretty solid consistency, that's massive for this team. For him to be able to bring you a little bit more as a creator, to be steady as a shooter, and he's already efficient as a play finisher, all that stuff. That's a big deal. That's a major weapon for them to have. I also look at Darius Garland, Logan, as a major key. What are you expecting from him? Because he's dealing with this toe thing. Looks like he's going to miss the start of the year. I personally feel like people are way too low on Garland right now. I'm expecting a big prove him wrong campaign from him. What's your outlook for Garland?
I mean, admittedly, I'm a little bit nervous about the toe and if that has taken any of his, burst. It's... You know, I mean, it's like a thumb. It's so imperative to just movement in general. And so that does concern me just because his game is so, heavily predicated on him getting downhill and getting by people. But, yeah, I think people are probably too low on Darius Garland, too. I mean, we regurgitated this stat all of last season, but the Cavs statistically, analytically, had a better offense with Garland without Mitchell than Mitchell with Garland. Garland is a special kind of player, and I generally still feel like he's underappreciated. He has his flaws, obviously. They're all defensively. He's a really damn good offensive player. His playmaking feel and IQ, his pace, the change in pace, his burst, his ability to create out of the pick and roll, his touch is phenomenal. That to me is probably the thing that is my favorite about Darius, just how reliably great he is as a three-point shooter. So I'm a little bit nervous about the toe, admittedly, but I think that, if Garland's out there, I think he's going to give you 20 and 8 and just makes you so much better. I think people are too low on him, man. Again, he has his flaws, and I'm worried that he could get picked on defensively again in the playoffs. I'd be a little bit disappointed if Darius Garland wasn't an all-star again this season. That's what I'm expecting out of Darius.
I agree. I think he is going to play way better in a playoff run if we see him this year, because regular season he was at an all-NBA level, just flat out. I think there is a very strong case that he was their best offensive player in the regular season last year, and there are many stretches where he just is their best offensive player flat out, and Mitchell is amazing, but Darius Garland is that great offensively. He is, in my opinion, the best ball handler in basketball. So incredibly dynamic. The hesitation is the nastiest dribble move that anybody has in the league. He's so damn shifty. He's so quick. And he pairs that with this brilliant creative passing ability and out of this world pull-up shooting ability. Garland is easily a top 5 shooter on the planet right now. You just look across the board and the guy shoots almost 90% from the free throw line. He shoots above 40% from three on high volume. He is absolutely lethal as a pull-up shooter and off the catch. That's another great trait of his. He's such a good off-ball player. He pairs that with this pick and roll on-ball dynamic scoring and playmaking genius. He's got arguably the best floater in basketball. It's right up there. He shot like 57% on floaters on crazy volume this past year. So he's one of the elite pick and roll players in basketball, one of the elite offensive players in basketball. And that was the case throughout all of last year. You mentioned it. When he was on the court without Mitchell, the Cavs had a 125 offensive rating. And Garland's raw numbers even sell him short, in my opinion, because he was only playing 30 minutes a game because the Cavs were blowing so many people out. But he was giving you, in those 30 minutes, 21, 3, and 7 on 60% true shooting. He was outstanding. Then he gets to the playoffs. He can barely walk. I mean, totally fucks up his toe. It was really hard to watch. He was falling down multiple times a game, couldn't explode, had no burst, just clearly in major pain. And it's like, of course he struggles. So yes, that toe thing is lingering, and that's still something of a concern, but he's got plenty of time to recover. The Cavs are not going to rush him back early in the season because they know that they can win regular season games without him. And if he comes back 100%, he's just an absolutely brilliant offensive player, and he totally changes how this team plays, because I do think he is the guy who I trust most in this offense. And like, maybe that sounds a little crazy because Mitchell is so great, and Mitchell has this like absolutely ridiculous combination of overwhelming downhill rim pressure and finishing in the paint. And then he can also take 10 pull-up threes a game and make 40% of them when he's on fire. Like Donovan Mitchell can give you 35 a game in a playoff series, and Garland can't do that. But when it comes to the balance between scoring and playmaking, the decision-making, consistently getting teammates involved and enhancing them and creating for efficient team offense, that's where I would just nitpick and say Mitchell at times can get that scoring blindness, and Garland is always going to be actively creating great shots for his teammates as well. And so the best news is, like, when you have them both on the floor, you don't put Mitchell in that position where he feels like he has to play hero ball. And I know some people are very critical of Mitchell for getting in that mode. Personally, I think last year you have to understand the context and how limited everybody around him was. And like Donovan Mitchell going out there and trying to score 35 points per game pretty much was the best thing for the Cavs offense in the playoffs. But that's not when the Cavs offense looks their best overall. They look their best overall when they have both dynamic guard creators on the floor. They're getting everybody involved. They're running smart actions. And the ceiling is just so incredibly high for that offense when everything's clicking and everybody's on the floor and everybody's healthy. Now, I don't think there's a way to really solve Darius Garland's defensive issues. I don't think there is a way to hide him when he's on the court. That's going to be a problem against a team like OKC. And he has to be so utterly insane on offense then to justify playing him 36 plus minutes a night, which is also really tough if you look and you're playing OKC, who has so many elite perimeter defenders, and every star is going to kind of struggle relative to their standards in that matchup. That could be a tough one for Garland. But again, that's the measuring stick of how do you look against the best team in the league, the reigning champs. I don't worry about it against anybody in the East. I just think the Cavs have the best two-way formula. I think they have the best offense, and I think that they have a better defense than anybody who's close to them offensively in the East, which is really only maybe New York. Like, that's kind of the only team offensively that's really even within striking distance. One more guy who I look at for this team, Jarrett Allen. I was just disappointed with in the playoffs, and a lot of it just came down to him not fully feeling ready to meet the moment, just in terms of like engagement. Again, at times just sort of lapses in focus defensively, not asserting himself on the boards, some issues guarding in space. There was just a lack of presence that was concerning. I don't think there's one number that you're going to look at with Jarrett Allen and it's going to be like, oh, this tells you just how bad he was. You just kind of have to watch the series and you're consistently underwhelmed, which is disappointing from a guy who's really good, who has incredible touch in the paint and good feel as a passer, and can absolutely get above the rim and be a super efficient finisher in that way. And he's a good defensive big. He's got decent mobility, and he is a very good rebounder, and he is a very good rim protector, and he just played below his level. But If everybody plays up to their potential, Cleveland should absolutely win the Eastern Conference, and it seems like we are aligned on that. Here's where it gets interesting in this division, Logan. Who's next for you?
I've got the Detroit Pistons.
Okay, as do I. What's your record prediction for them?
I have them going 48-34, and they're going to be my 4 seed.
I have them winning 46 games. They are my 5 seed. So this was a very successful season this past year for Detroit, them taking the leap from being in the NBA's gutter the year before to making the playoffs, being very competitive in a playoff series. In terms of record improvement, it's one of the biggest that we've seen in a single season in NBA history. And you're expecting a little bit more improvement this year, Logan, in terms of their record. So why is that, and what are you expecting out of Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, last year was such a big leap for Detroit. They went from the worst team in the league to the playoffs, 14-68 to 44-38. They tripled their win total. It was the 6th greatest single-season turnaround in NBA history, and they got their first playoff win since 2008. So major steps forward for this team. My biggest concern, I think, with this team, Carson, into next season, actually, really revolves around just the shooting. And that may sound overly simplistic, but with them losing Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., I'm just worried if they're going to be able to get the same kind of production out of their guys. That was a big part of this team's turnaround, too, their ability from behind the arc. They went from 26th in three-point percentage to 17th. They went from 29th to 20th in three-pointers made. Obviously, interrelated with all of this turnaround. I feel like it doesn't have to be said, but Carson and I also talked about this all the time last year. The fact that they went from guys who don't belong in the NBA to actual competent NBA players, that was a huge part. But bringing in Beasley and Hardaway was massive for this team, and I just look and I'm not as confident in the shooting, and I think it's just important when you have players with the flaws that some of the guys getting big minutes for Detroit have. Cade, isn't an elite three-point shooter. He's a really good playmaker, but he likes to get into the teeth of the defense and really needs that space to do what he does best. Duren really isn't a floor spacer, right? Asar, in his minutes, isn't a floor spacer. And so I think it's really important that they shoot well from behind the arc so they, defenses can't just build a wall and load up in the paint and clog it up the way it was a few years ago. But Jaden Ivey, his return, I think, is important for this team as well, how much of a burden he can take off of Cade's shoulders. He was a 41% three-point shooter last season. I really hope that continues. That was a big question mark about him as a player last season. Career high in three-point percentage. He was 45% as a catch-and-shooter as well. So I think he's going to be vitally important this season. And then they do add Duncan Robinson, who is a career 39% three-point shooter, so he should help. They also had Karis LeVert, 37% from deep last season. That's probably, I think, my biggest concern. I want to talk a little bit more about Ivy, but I'm just worried about them shooting as well as they did last season.
That's fair, and I think overall the offense is where you should be concerned about this team. Not in the sense that they're going to be a bad offense, just in the sense that they could be a very average offense, which is what they were last year. And when they got to the playoffs, you saw some of their offensive issues come to light. They are so dependent on Cade Cunningham in terms of him just being given such a massive offensive burden. And we know what he can do in terms of floor raising for this team. I thought he did a really good job last year overall, but there are also some areas for improvement with Cade. He is not the sort of guy who single-handedly is going to make you a top 10 offensive. You just put competent pieces around him. He's not like a Trae Young level offensive player in that way because he doesn't create as many advantages. He doesn't create as much easy offense. He's a really gifted, difficult shot maker, one of the best mid-range shooters in basketball right now. But when it comes to creating that high efficiency offense, if it's around the rim or if it's beyond the three-point arc, that's where he struggles. So that's where I think you got to look at this year and you can say, okay, the finishing stuff with Cade has always been an issue. I don't know that that's getting better. With his lack of burst, with his lack of vertical athleticism around the rim, just consistently, he really struggles to finish efficiently around the basket. I'm not really seeing that changing this year. I do think, though, the pull-up three-point shooting is an area where we should expect Cade to improve some. And he actually did improve some this past year. Then in the playoffs, it was just brutal, his shooting from beyond the arc. But I think that with the level of jump shooter that he is, that should be a big point of emphasis for Cade. And maybe he now can take 7, 8 threes a game, make 37% of them. That gives him a path to a little bit more efficient, self-created offense to be valuable for this team. And then the other big thing with Cade is cutting down on the turnovers. Part of that is high usage, but also Cade just has some really bad turnovers, sometimes as a product of ball handling that other elite guards do not, flat out. And it's inexcusable, the turnover rates that we're talking about. 4.5 a game in the regular season, 5.3 a game in the playoffs. That has to come down. So I am not necessarily expecting a ton of growth from Cade, just because I do think there are certain limitations to his game that I don't necessarily see him totally overcoming, right? Like I talk about the finishing, the turnovers. We'll see how much better that gets. But I do think the pull-up three-point shooting is an area that we can expect him to improve a little bit. And I think Cade should be a little bit better this year. We've talked about this before. I think his improvement last year was overrated, not because Cade isn't really good. He absolutely is, but more so because he was underrated the year before, and he really just improved on the margins last year, and I think maybe we could see a little bit more of that this year. But maybe the most interesting part of this Pistons season, Logan, is going to be the return of Jaden Ivey, who is a talented offensive player, but the Pistons really played their best basketball without him last year. I mean, it was after he got hurt that they hit their stride. They were actually sub 500 when Ivey played. They lost the Cade Ivey minutes together last year. They were better on both sides of the ball statistically without him. And he's still a flawed young player. Like, he was creating with below average efficiency out of pick and roll and isolation last year. There are some areas in which he is lacking as a scorer. Finishing, he's inefficient. The intermediate game is lacking.
I mean, I agree with all this. Not just below average. He was a 43rd percentile pick and roll ball handler. That is just below, but he's a 12th percentile isolation scorer.
That's tough. And he's also a negative defender. So how much can he refine this stuff now in the way that the team needs him to? That's going to be a huge swing factor for just how good they can be. I will say he has the tools to be passable on defense, physically, athletically, and he's in a culture now where everybody defends in Detroit, man, and that includes Cade. Like, Cade has had some really impressive moments defensively, so you would hope that you get some buy-in out of him there and you can see some improvement against like that passable level. And then the shot is just a huge swing factor because he was shooting the shit out of the ball last year. You mentioned 41% from three, phenomenal off the catch. That's way better than his first 2 years. The shot was a question with him as a prospect, so we'll see how legit that improvement was. I don't think he's going to shoot 40%, but can he shoot 37% or 38% instead of the 33, 34% that we got over his first couple years? That would make a meaningful big difference here, because even with some of his issues that I mentioned in terms of his scoring efficiency and polish right now, like just with his ball handling and athleticism that this team is desperately lacking outside of Cade from guards on ball. Like, if he can also just shoot it really well off the catch, he will help this team.
I agree. He's an 88th percentile spot-up scorer last season. I think that is Ivey's, special strength, his ability to attack off the catch, off of an advantage, and just shoot the hell out of the ball off the catch. Like, if he can do that at a really high level and supplement Cade's ball handling just enough to cut down on both of their turnovers, I think he can be productive. I agree with you. I think there is a pretty long list of things that Jaden needs to improve on to be like a really great player. The turnovers, you mentioned it, they were 5.3 points worse with Ivey on the floor. This isn't as big of a concern because it's not a crazy drop-off. I would like to see his free throw rate climb up a little bit. It's dropped about 8% since his rookie season. That was one of the things that I loved about Ivey when he came out of the draft, was his ability to just get downhill relentlessly and draw free throws. Like, I thought that would be more of a cornerstone of his game, and it is just the touch. I will say, 59% in the restricted area, 40% in the paint non-restricted area, 37% on pull-ups. All of those are career highs. Honestly, the pull-ups and mid-range number aren't even that bad. He was 37 on pull-ups, 35 on mid-range. But I thought he'd be
Yeah,
a better
35 mid-range is pretty rough.
Yeah, I thought he'd be a better finisher in the interior as well, and I think that's another area where he needs to improve. But he is. He's the big swing guy that I look at that could, make Detroit markedly better. I think Ron Holland, too, and Asar Thompson could make marginal improvements. I still really like them, but Ivy is really the guy that I'm tapping offensively that could help them out a lot.
For sure, because they just need that other ball handler so much. Like last year, you think about how important a Dennis Schroeder was for them in the playoffs. Anybody who could take the ball out of Cade's hands and make a play is going to be able to find a role for this team. And Ivy is a good talent there. Ivy is a guy who, even with his flaws that we're talking about, he can give you 18, 4, and 5 on decent efficiency, and there's just nobody else on this team outside of Cade who can produce like that, who has the skill set to take on that role. So there's definitely areas for improvement. The intermediate touch, the rim finishing. You mentioned the free throw rate. It's such a great shout. I mean, he was a monster in that way in college. He had a free throw rate of 0.5. He's getting to the line at an elite rate in college, and that hasn't been the case as much this past year in the NBA. But I think his value, once you get to a playoff environment for this team, will be felt, and they will definitely be better for having him back than they were without him last year, even though the numbers say they were better without him last year.
46.9% his final year at Purdue.
His free throw rate?
Yeah.
0.469? Yeah, that's high, man. That's pretty freaking high. I will say, I think the offensive talent that they added on the bench is ultimately similar to what they had with Beasley and THJ. Like when you bring in LeVert and Duncan Robinson, maybe it's a little bit of a downgrade. I mean, Malik Beasley was just shooting the ball so ridiculously well this past year, and he's such an elite special shooter. To be able to get him up with the volume he can and still be that efficient, to do it moving off screens, he's pretty incredible in that regard. And he brings more on-ball juice than a Duncan Robinson, who has very little there. But Duncan Robinson is still an elite shooter, a high IQ offensive player. He's got solid feel, and I think that he'll bring some value there. And LeVert is one of these guys who does actually bring some juice with the ball in his hands. Mm-hmm. So he's not the catch and shooter that a THJ was, certainly, but he is more of an actual creator and playmaker on ball, which is also valuable here.
Yeah, and I like Marcus Sasser as a bench point guard, too. I mean, I hope he gets more burn this year without Schroeder.
So the offensive talent is solid. It's fine. I will say, though, there are some guys who have some pretty big offensive questions who are going to play big roles for this team. Specifically, I look at Asar Thompson, and he is going to be stepping into a starting role in all likelihood. This guy's already one of the best defenders on the planet. Absolutely ridiculous. We talk about the Thompson twins and how they are one of a kind, even though there's two of them all the time. But such an insane athlete, such an elite point of attack defender with crazy matchup versatility already. You look at what he was able to do to Jalen Brunson in that playoff series, sticking to a smaller guard like that, affecting him with his length, playing with physicality, applying ball pressure. He can just about do it all defensively. The one thing I would like to see from him is I would like to see him cut down on those fouls a little bit. That was an issue in the playoffs. I believe he was averaging more than 6 fouls per 36 minutes.
Dude, him and Duren both, man. I mean, Duren, I think, had the second most fouls of any player last season outside of Triple J.
And your team needs you to play big minutes. You are the key weapon on this team defensively, especially when it comes to drawing those perimeter matchups. That is also an area where, you lose Dennis Schroeder. He was another quality point of attack defender. And so now there's even more of an expectation on Asar to be the guy who is your A1 perimeter defender every night. He's got to be able to stay on the floor and not get into foul trouble. But really, we know that he's going to be elite defensively. It's going to come down to how can he deliver positive value offensively. And I think he knows what he does well offensively and is able to get a lot out of just his sheer athleticism. He's a great cutter. He's a very good offensive rebounder. He's great in transition. We talk about the same stuff with Amen, but he is significantly more limited in terms of half-court offense than Amen.
He shot 31% outside of the restricted area last season.
Right. He doesn't even have the decent touch that Amen does, the decent mid-range pull-up game. Obviously, that's still maybe the biggest area in need of improvement for Amen, but Amen's handle is better. I also think Amen's passing is better. He's a little bit more of a dynamic playmaker, and he's always been more inclined to like be capable of taking on an actual on-ball offensive role in the half court. So that's where I worry a little bit about fit in half-court offense, especially when you talk about shooting volume being something of a question for this team. I still think Ausar will be a positive for them with his elite defense, with his special athleticism. He impacts the game in a lot of ways, but when you get to a playoff series, it might be a little bit tricky for him to find his role offensively when you're playing him alongside a non-shooting center like Duren, and when we have really questions about the shooting consistency of Cade and Ivy. Tobias Harris is good, but he's not a volume three-point shooter, so I think you're absolutely right to flag that as a concern, even though I was impressed with Ausar overall in the playoffs last year. And Duren, I really look at his defense, and that's going to be the swing factor between him being like a decent starting center and a good one, because offensively, he's gifted. Like, he's a good offensive center. He's a good play finisher. I mean, a big-ass athlete, strong, very efficient around the rim, and also good touch. I think he shot 55% in the paint outside the restricted area. That's a really good number, and he's got good passing feel, and he's a monster offensive rebounder. So, does a lot of good stuff there. Defensively, he has the tools. I think he improved last year. His defense was a real issue a couple years ago. I think it's gotten better. I thought he protected the rim well in the playoffs. I still think he has to be more consistent there as an anchor for this team defensively, because ultimately their path to making a playoff run, I think it's going to hinge more so on, can we be one of the elite defenses in basketball, and can our offense be good enough?
Yeah, and it's weird, man, this Duren-Stewart dilemma that they kind of have, because I like both of them in the rotation, but they both have their trade-offs. You mentioned it. They have a 5% higher rebound rate with Duren. They're nearly 6 points better in terms of offensive rating with Duren on the court. He's a great complement to Cade. They've got really good chemistry. But then you look at the other numbers, they're 6 points worse with Duren on the floor defensively. Mm-hmm. You know, he doesn't have great agility or burst, and I just don't think he has great defensive feel and awareness. And the most damning number, he held players 1.3% below their average field goal percentage inside 6 feet. You look at other players around him, it's like a big Vooch number. Compared to Stu, Big Stu held players 11% below their average field goal percentage inside 6 feet. That's like a Gobert or Big Zoo kind of number. And so it just sucks. Like, you're just having this kind of, push and pull. Like, both of them obviously have their strengths, but they also come with their trade-offs. You could just, meld them together. Yeah.
It's hilarious, dude. I just pulled up the on-off numbers, or the with or without you numbers on Data Baller, and there is literally a 6-point swing on offense in Duren's favor. There is a 6-point swing in terms of defensive rating in Isaiah Stewart's favor. So they have almost the exact same net rating. It's a 1.1 net rating with Duren. It's a 1.5 net rating with Stewart, and they're either pretty good on offense, below average on defense, or they're below average on offense, pretty good on defense. Stewart is a really good defensive player. I definitely think Duren, he's going to be the starter.
Missed
obviously,
him.
We've
They
seen
missed
that,
him
and he's
in the
just more
playoffs.
talented. They did miss Stu in the playoffs for sure. I would bank on the offensive talent with Duren and the fact that there's a little more to tap into defensively there. Like, I think he's going to have a good year. I'm a cautious Duren optimist for this year, I will say. I think that there's enough talent to bank on him being a quality starting center there. And then the bench for this team is solid. Like, they just feel like a very safe bet to be a good defense, an average offense, and a pretty good above average team overall. I think despite the fact that they're a young team, and you would think therefore that there's maybe a bigger range of outcomes, I actually think it's a pretty small range of outcomes with Detroit. I think they're a pretty high floor, low ceiling team this year. We'll talk about the team who is next in this division and why it is that we both slightly prefer Detroit, or slightly, at least in my case. It is very close between the two. Detroit just has a better roster than Milwaukee, like significantly so. And now they don't have a Giannis, and that's why if you get to the playoffs, maybe I would be more scared to see the Bucks, because they have a player who is singularly that dominant. And Detroit still wouldn't scare me come playoffs if I'm a top seed. I just don't think they have enough offensive skill on this roster overall, and Cade isn't like developed and refined enough as an offensive one to really control a series with the sort of like level that you would need to pull off an upset. And their defense is good. I don't think it's elite enough. So that's the thing. I just don't see like that real upside that gives them a puncher's chance for like a big time upset. But this was already a quality team last year. I expect marginal improvement from a few guys on this team because there are a lot of young players. You expect to make some of those little improvements, and I see them trending slightly upwards because of that. But Logan, let's talk about those Milwaukee Bucks. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're next for you in this division. I know they are for me. I have them winning 45 games as my 6th seed, so just 1 game and 1 seed behind Detroit. What's your prediction for Milwaukee?
So I actually have them closer to another team in this division, but I are also my 6th seed. I have them going 42-40.
Interesting. Obviously, a lot went down in Milwaukee this offseason. They waived and stretched Damian Lillard, which opened up the cap space for them to bring in Miles Turner. We thought that there would be more Giannis trade rumors than there ultimately were. They are running it back in a lot of ways this year, despite the very disappointing last couple seasons for them. So 42 wins. That would be the fewest of the Giannis era since what? 2017? Been a long, long time since they've been that mediocre. Why are your expectations so mid for the Bucks this year?
I just don't like this team. I don't like this team at all, man. I think they're just banking on Miles Turner being way better than I'm expecting him to be. I don't know, man. I just don't see it with this team. I think they are going to be I think they'll figure it out offensively to where they'll be like slightly above average. I think they can get there. I could see that like Giannis is just going to produce. He's going to give you 30 points, 12 boards, 6+ assists a night. He's going to make, Gary Trent Jr. better, Miles Turner better, AJ Green, Taurean Prince, all the shooting on this team. He's going to make them better. And he is why this team has a decently high floor, but I really don't like them defensively either, man.
Yeah.
I think the backcourt is bad. I think KPJ and Gary Trent Jr. Are both going to get cooked. Kuzma sucks, man. I cannot believe they traded Middleton for Kuz. Like, now that I was optimistic initially with Kuz that he could come in here and do some of the role player stuff. I would have probably rather held on to Middleton.
Yeah.
And Turner is an upgrade from Brook Lopez, admittedly. He's just has way more movement. Brook can't move at this stage in his career, man. He's so old. Like, Turner can get up and down the court, but he's a bad rebounder. I think he's probably still a little bit overrated as a defender. I know he had 2 blocks per game last season. And I really think Haliburton made Miles Turner a lot better, man. We talked about this last season, but...
What a revelation, Logan. Wow.
Look, man, Dak fucking Prescott and Miles Turner. Sometimes you get burnt and you just got to put your hand up, Nick Collison style, dude.
Yeah, baby.
Anyways, Turner was giving you he was giving you 15 points per game. He actually played pretty well last season. 2 years ago, he was worse without Haliburton. But, I think Giannis makes him better, but I think Indiana's style of play manufactured a lot of open looks for Turner that maybe I don't expect him to get as many this season. And I really don't like this bench, man. I don't like Bobby Portis as a player. I really like Cole Anthony when he came into the league. I thought he was going to be something special. He's a backup point guard, really bad defensively. I don't see it, man. There is a lack of talent here and a lack of depth that I trust, and I worry. This isn't factored into my win total, but I do fear that if Giannis goes out, this team is just cooked for however long he misses time. Like, they are so dependent on him, and they're just thoroughly mediocre around him. I think the Bucks' best course of action moving forward is to not be sneaking into the playoffs, getting in at the bottom of the East. I know Giannis loves Milwaukee. He is determined to stay here. He has made it pretty clear that he loves the city. He doesn't want to go anywhere. I think it is in both of their best interests to let Giannis move to a better team and just recoup a shitload of assets for the future, because whenever Giannis is gone, man, the future is very, very bleak for this franchise.
It almost feels too obvious to even talk about at this point because they've been so deep in their own grave, really ever since the Dame trade revealed itself to just not be what they hoped it would be, but to be as far away as they were and not have any assets and any avenues to improve for the foreseeable future, and then to also lose Dame because of the Achilles injury and now have to stretch his contract so you can sign Miles Turner, yippee, but now you are paying $54 million a year for the next 4 years to Turner and Dame in tandem, but really only for Miles Turner to play for your team. Like, I think it just goes without saying that the Bucks window is completely closed with Giannis, and it's just going to come down to, okay, are both parties going to accept that move on, or do they want to just continue this relationship because that's what makes them happy? The Bucks are happy having the greatest player in their franchise history drag them to win 45 games, and Giannis is happy staying with the franchise that ultimately took the first gamble on him and where he's made so many memories and played so many years. Like, that's a personal decision. I can't speculate on it anymore. I think it's very obvious what Giannis above all else should want, because the Bucks not wanting to give up on Giannis until he forces their hand, that makes sense to me, just because even if they do get a shit ton back for him, they're still not going to have enough of their own picks to benefit from a tank. So it's going to suck for them either way. For Giannis, you would just think he wants to contend, but he's sticking it out in Milwaukee for another year. So I am a little higher on the Bucks than you. That's purely a Giannis thing, though. I just think Giannis is one of the all-time regular season floor raisers, and I think he can do a lot for this team, but I don't think anybody is going to be asked to do more for their team than Giannis. And like you said, the non-Giannis minutes are going to be brutal. If Giannis gets hurt, this team will look like one of the absolute worst in basketball because it's just a bad roster around Giannis, like straight up. And they had no options once the Dame thing went kabloom. Like, that was just the reality. They were fucked, and they still are. So Miles Turner, I like as a fit and a talent alongside Giannis, as a stretch big who can protect the rim and isn't a literal dinosaur like Brook Lopez. Like, that's in a lot of ways a good player to pair with Giannis. Obviously, I think the fact that they're having to pay as much as they are when you account for the Dame stretch and wave situation, like, that's really, really difficult. That limits them so much. But I like Turner here. But other than that, there's not another quality starter on this basketball team. They have no creators other than Giannis. Their defensive personnel in the backcourt and on the wings is definitely subpar. They are really lacking point of attack defenders. And there's just a couple players here who are going to be in key roles that I really don't like. Kuz is probably, almost certainly, I would say, going to start for this team. And I just don't know how I feel about that. When they made the trade, getting him for Middleton, I think I gave it like a C- at the time, because I was like, okay, I understand the vision philosophically. You want the younger, longer, bigger, better athlete who theoretically has more defensive upside, and he's on a bit more of a flexible contract. And like, yeah, that on paper, in theory, addresses some needs for this Bucks team. But what about the fact that, like, Kuz just isn't nearly as good at basketball as Middleton, and that he's highly unreliable in these areas that you're banking on him? I think Bucks fans, unfortunately, got a full serving of that experience this past year. When Giannis was on the floor without Kyle Kuzma, Logan, the Bucks had a +8 net rating. When Giannis was on the floor with Kyle Kuzma, they had an even net rating. Like, not only is Kuz not good, he is specifically a bad fit alongside Giannis because he's such a bad jump shooter, especially this past year. He was terrible. And his decision-making is so bad. And his lack of ability to play off of Giannis, it's a big problem. I mean, a guy who wants to have the ball in his hands a little bit, has bad shot selection, just steps on Giannis's toes in a way that's counterproductive. I would way rather just have like a straight-up quality spot-up three-point shooter who Giannis can be allowed to play Giannis ball and just make kick-out passes, and that guy can at least knock down the shots and play his role.
Dude, slot Kuz to the bench and just have the Kuzma, Portis, Cole Anthony bench units, man.
I don't think it's unreasonable to actually say
To
you
start
would get
Taurean
more
Prince
out of Kuz
or
to
AJ
have a
Green.
little bit of creation off the bench, and that's being generous to Kuz, but at least he's a guy who can get a shot up for himself and then start a better fit alongside Giannis. Yeah, I would go with AJ Green over Taurean Prince. Now, the problem is if you're starting AJ and Gary Trent Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr., then you're really small, then you're really lacking on the glass. And that's why I think Kuz is going to start, because in terms of size, length, rebounding, athleticism, you want him out there, because the alternatives at the 3, like specifically in terms of rebounding, it's going to be bad. And Turner is already a very bad rebounding center. So you need to find a way to hang in those categories. But I really do believe the best path here for this team to reach their ceiling is go point Giannis, maximize shooting around him. Because the most encouraging thing for this team is that last year, Giannis got them to a 122 offensive rating in the minutes that he played without Damian Lillard. He is just so ridiculously dominant now as a downhill player with the ball in his hands. He is so phenomenal out of pick and roll. He's gotten so good as a passer that he is a true elite offensive engine in a way that he wasn't a few years ago. He is absolutely outstanding there. And that's what they should be leaning into as much as possible, just finding guys who can complement him. Like when Giannis plays with Kuz, that number drops from a 122 offensive rating to a 117 offensive rating. That fit is bad. I also don't like KPJ playing a starting role alongside Giannis. I understand the Bucks are looking at this roster and they're saying, we need a ball handler. We need a guard who can just do basic stuff in terms of handling and creation. But honestly, like, I would be more inclined to buy all into, okay, Giannis, we are playing heliocentric ass basketball. You are our point guard. And I'd stagger the minutes more so to say, all right, let's put a couple capable ball handlers on this bench unit, a little more KPJ there, a little more Kuz there, because I just don't like the fits of those guys with Giannis. I think they're both low IQ basketball players. Like, I don't want KPJ taking the ball out of Giannis's hands. I don't like his decision making. He's another subpar defender. He shot 31% from 3 last year, not somebody who plays well alongside him in terms of fitting an off ball off the catch. So I'm just going to keep saying it, dude. Like, the Bucks are going to be at their best when they max out shooting around Giannis and they play Giannis ball. When he played with Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green last year, Logan, in those lineups with those 3 on the floor, Milwaukee had a 127 offensive rating and a plus 16 net rating. And we saw them find success in the playoffs when they did what? When they went with Giannis and the bench lineups. And that's because multiple guys were catastrophic in the starting lineup for Milwaukee. I mean, Kuz was so bad. Brook Lopez, obviously, who's gone, he was so bad. But it just makes the most sense. And the reality is, this team just isn't talented enough to actually contend, like, flat out no matter what. And you get to a playoff environment, the lack of creation outside of Giannis, it's going to be glaring no matter what. But I'd rather just put the 2 flamethrowers alongside him who complement him really well than a bad fit like KPJ, who's just not good, just so I can say, hey, we have another ball handler on the court. I don't care. I don't want him handling the ball when I understand it's a crazy burden to put on Giannis, but so be it, man. He's too good. He has to carry that burden with this team. And let's see if he can average 33, 12, and 7 and still make them a very good offense when he's on the court. And the crazy thing is, I actually think that he can do that in his minutes if they put the right dudes around him and if we get a fair bit of stagger with KPJ and Kuz.
Doc Rivers
don't
won't.
like those guys.
He won't.
Yeah, what the hell? I mean, we're running it back with Doc, dude. What has he done to keep his job?
Hell yeah, man.
It's insane. Have you ever seen such a disappointing season from a team with an all-time great player in the heart of his prime and they just decide to change so little? Like, I don't know that they would have changed anything. They didn't have a choice with Dame, basically. It was either we're just going to eat his contract for the next 2 years or we're going to eat it for the next 4 years and see if we can add a player in the short term.
Only thing I think of is like Kobe with some of those Lakers teams in the mid-2000s.
Yeah, that's a good shout. We've seen it. Kareem, if you look at the 75 Bucks into the 76 Lakers, he missed the playoffs in back-to-back years. Like, we have seen it, you're right, but it's very rare throughout the course of league history, and it's always extremely disappointing. And this is one of those rosters that is going down in like the conversations for the worst that we've seen around a player of this caliber when he is this great in really the heart of his prime. I mean, it's the best he's ever been offensively. But I do think the non-Giannis minutes are going to be terrible. If you look at the minutes that KPJ played without Giannis this past year, the Bucks had under a 109 offensive rating. They had a -8 net rating. And I use those minutes as the point of comparison because I do think KPJ is just the guy who I guess it makes the most sense to give a decent load as the bench ball handler, but their offense was terrible when he was on the floor without Giannis, and the depth here is bad. And yeah, Giannis is going to miss 10 games, dude. Like, it's just so rare that anybody plays 75 plus games, these superstars, especially when you're in your 30s. Like, Giannis is 30 now. And so if you look at recent years, I mean, 67 games, 73, 63, 67, 67. Nice.
How many?
So, like,
yeah, I was waiting on it.
yeah, good stuff. If he misses 15 games, the Bucks are going to go fucking 3-12 in those games.
They'll probably miss the playoffs. I don't think they have that margin.
No, they won't miss the playoffs in the East. Brother, the East is too bad.
If he missed 15 games, 15?
Yeah, they still make the playoffs.
They're chopped. I'll take somebody else.
I disagree because I actually think like if Giannis played every game for this team, they'd probably be close to a 50-win pace. But they're going to be so terrible without him.
I would take probably Toronto or Miami to get him if Giannis missed that kind of time. I don't think they have that margin, man. I think this team is bad.
Dude, in the regular season, Giannis, without Dame, they had a +9 net rating. That team around Giannis was bad. Giannis is insane, bro. Giannis is an absolute monster. So, I mean, last couple years, you look at it, double-digit on-off swings. They've got a +6, +7 on-court net rating with him out there. Like, yeah, they had Dame, but the teams have been bad anyways. And with him, without Dame, he's still been able to lead them to a good place as a team. Look, I think it's a catastrophe what they've done to him, but I do think that Giannis is just about as good an example of human flex seal as there is in the NBA right now. I think he's going to make them a good offense, as crazy as that is. Not a very good one, but an above average one. And defensively, I think that they'll be average. I think that they are relying a lot on the rim protection of him and Turner, and he has to hold together so much for this team on the glass. Like, respect to Giannis, I guess, for sticking it out. I would have wanted to be long gone, long ago, because there's one other top 100 player in the NBA on this roster, and that's Miles Turner. And nobody else even comes close to that, honestly. And they have no maneuverability. There's no path to getting better. Their entire path to winning a playoff series even hinges on Giannis being so utterly dominant and then being able to shoot the shit out of the ball alongside him, and him having this crazy series where he puts up 35, 13, and 8 and is creating 55 points of offense a game. And like, their offensive ceiling could be very high like that, but I can see that against the Hawks or the Magic. Giannis is genuinely that great, but the roster is so bad that I can't even pick them to win a series against one of those teams. And goes without saying, I mean, the best of the best in the East and the NBA, they're just multiple cuts above this Bucks roster. Miles Turner, I will say, just to give a little specific numbers to back up what you were saying about the Hallie effect. If you look at his time over the last 3 years, his numbers with Hallie compared to without them, per 75 possessions. Without Hallie, he averages 3 fewer points per game, and his true shooting percentage drops by 4%. So absolutely his shot quality has been enhanced by Hallie significantly. I don't know how much of a two-man game we're going to get between Giannis and Turner. I think that could be fun just because of the pick and pop aspect. I mean, Miles Turner pops every single time. And so that could be a nice complement with Giannis's downhill pressure. Like, Miles Turner is good. He's a great jump shooting big. He's a great pick and pop big. He's a pretty good mismatch attacking post scorer. He's a pretty good rim protector, but he is a specialized player who has some limitations. I mean, offensively, he is lacking versatility because pretty limited in terms of putting the ball on the floor. He's gotten better in terms of making reads. I think that's just infectious in Indiana, but he's still limited there. Defensively, yeah, he is not Brook Lopez. He's not the slowest guy to ever exist, but he is still pretty rigid schematically there. So he's good, but he's supposed to be the third or fourth best player on a team if you want to be really good. Not your second best player, and the drop-off after him is the size of the Atlantic Ocean.
Well said. I mean, I could see Milwaukee winning a playoff series, but it does require Giannis just going nuts.
That's it. That's what it's all about. It's
Yeah.
about Giannis going insane, and again, dudes being able to knock down jumpers off the catch around him. I can't write off the possibility, which is crazy.
Neither can I.
To Giannis's
As
greatness
low
and
as I am
also
on this team.
the East. It also says a lot about how open first-round series in the East are going to be if you can avoid the Cavs or the Knicks. Even the Knicks, I don't know. They're not good enough to where, like, I would say it's impossible that Giannis could carry this group of bums past them. But it's definitely unlikely, and that's unfortunate, and that's disappointing. But selfishly, I am excited to see the straight-up Giannis ball experiment. I hope that they fully lean into that, and we could see the most ridiculous numbers of his career this year, and that would at least be fun. You talk about them wasting Kobe in the mid-2000s. At least you got to see him average 35 points per game in 06, and he improved that offense by like 20 points per 100 possessions. Like, there is something fun about seeing one of the greats carry a bum squad, but it also just sucks because you want to see them actually having a chance to contend, and this roster just doesn't have that. Speaking of teams that should have a chance to contend but don't because of unfortunate circumstances, this is way more unfortunate because the Bucks did it to themselves. The Pacers just lost a ray of sunshine for this season, Logan. I'm being presumptuous, and you know what happens when you assume. I make an ass out of you and me. But do you have the Pacers next in this division, and what are your expectations?
I do, but I don't think all hope should be lost. I have the Pacers going 41-41 and finishing as my 7 seed.
Wow. We are apart on the Indiana Pacers. I have them missing the play-in. I have them winning 35 games as my 11 seed.
I get that. I understand that completely. There's a few things to monitor with Indiana that I think are going to make big outcomes. One, obviously, Haliburton's out. When does he return? What does he look like? Does he even return this year? I kind of feel the same way, like I said about Tatum. It's like, if you guys are – if he doesn't look like he is ready to go 100%, there's just no reason to even, put him back out there.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming back. I mean, he tore his Achilles a month after Tatum, and we are not seeing and hearing murmurings about, a one-of-a-kind recovery timeline from him like we are with Tatum, who I still don't really think is going to come back. I think it's more possible with Tatum. I feel like, based on sort of the vibes I'm getting, it seems like Hallie has come to terms with the fact that he's not going to play this year.
That being said, even though Hallie is going to miss, I think they have 2 guys that can step up and produce in his absence. I really buy into Andrew Nembhard as a 2-way player and as a guy who's going to be able to produce offensively. TJ McConnell off the bench as ball handlers. I think they're still going to be able to produce offensively. You've still got Siakam. The guy I'm really looking to take a leap on this team is Ben Mathurin, though. I think if there's somebody that could get better and really produce in his absence and take over, around 20 points per game, 20-plus points per game, I think is attainable. You still got Siakam. It's really Hallie not being there, and then what they're going to do with the center spot to try to aggregate the loss of Miles Turner. I think Isaiah Jackson will start, who's a pretty solid rim protector and rebounder. I don't love that. They have Jay Huff off the bench.
Start Jay Huff, bro.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Huff's bigger. Huff's solid. Good rim protector. Good rebounder. Really good lob threat.
Shit.
He does. It's just, how good can this defense be when it was still a major problem last season and now they're down Miles Turner?
Was their defense a major problem last season? I don't agree with that. Their defense got so much better. They were pretty good defense overall, especially
I'm saying they figured it out, but they weren't, consistent. I think they figured it out by the playoffs, but now that you're down Turner, I don't know, man. I still think offense is the strength of this team and where they're going to win basketball games on, with McConnell, with Nembhard, with Siakam carrying the group, and then I think they're going to be passable defensively, but I'm expecting big things from Mathurin this season, man. I think he takes a leap. We see him take more shots, more of a responsibility. And I get that it sucks this year not having Hallie out there because it takes the possibility of a championship run away when it feels like the East is so open, with the Celtics reshaping. The silver lining could be, though, that Mathurin gets a lot better this season. They stay together. And then when Hallie does come back 2 years from now, you kind of have a big 3, and you just need to shore up that center spot, and then you're ready to go and compete again, because I like that recipe. I mean, and I think Siakam is going to do enough in the regular season to produce where this offense figures it out. He's one of the best co-stars in the league, and I think he can, kick his production up a notch to keep this offense afloat. So I think they're just going to be solid. I think they're going to be exactly 500, man. I think that they're going to be a solid offense and a below-average defense, and yeah, I really like their depth. I think they've got a lot of solid contributors, and I think that they'll be able to. And if there's anybody that's going to be able to squeeze some juice out of their team, man, I think it's Rick Carlisle. So I get that Hallie's out, but I don't think all hope is lost, man. I think there are things to be excited about if I'm a Pacers fan.
I might be a little bit higher on their defense than you are, and I definitely think I'm lower on their offense. I think their defense is probably the side of the ball that I slightly prefer this year, which is crazy when you think about the Pacers of a couple years ago that were off to a historic offensive start and were like 24th in defensive rating. But obviously, Hallie being out of the picture just changes everything. I mean, he's the heart and soul of this team and by far their best player and their offensive engine. Defensively, though, I think they're going to be okay. They're losing Miles Turner. That's unfortunate just because of the pure rim protection backline defense. But Isaiah Jackson and Jay Huff, they can be decent in the aggregate. I think they're going to take a step back defensively, but they were a top 10 defense, I think, after January 1st last year. They defended well in the playoffs. And like a lot of their principles, just when it comes to pressuring the ball, extending their defense, they've got really a lot of the same personnel. Like Hallie defended pretty well in the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to feel his absence much defensively. Like, I still think they've got a lot of dudes who compete at the point of attack. They've got perimeter speed. They've got decent enough rim protection. They've got decent enough wings with Siakam, I mean, who really defended quite well in the playoffs this past year. Jarris Walker is a good defensive talent. I think they'll be fine there. I just think offensively, this is a team that the last 2 years overall has been the best offense in basketball. I think they're going to absolutely plummet. I think it is going to be an offensive free fall for this team. I think that Tyrese Haliburton is that valuable. And also, I mean, the offensive drop-off that you're getting from Miles Turner to either of these guys at the center position is absolutely massive, because the Haliburton and Turner two-man game, it was so much of what was great about this team's offense. And now you lose that. You lose the jump shooting and the scoring efficiency and some of the mismatch attacking of Turner completely. Now you're talking about well below average offensive centers if it's Huff or if it's Isaiah Jackson starting. I like Jay Huff more. I think Isaiah Jackson probably will start. We'll see. Either way, massive downgrade. And Hallie just sets everything into motion for this team, man, which is why I always think it's so stupid when people try to say that, like, he's a system product or anything like that. Like, no, man, he is the system. I've said it so many times, but he is the best decision maker in basketball. There's nobody who is better at maximizing every advantage that is there to be taken while minimizing risk. This is a guy who is the best in basketball at hunting easy baskets for his team, not creating the easiest offense necessarily, but finding the easy offense wherever it's available. But also, as an advantage creator, as just an offensive talent, he's by far the best on this team when it comes to just consistently out of pick and roll, putting the defense in a bind with his combination of the pull-up shooting from beyond the arc if you play drop, the lethal floater game, and then his ability to make so many different passes. And again, when he had a great pick and pop big like Miles Turner, there was just really no good answer for defenses out of pick and roll versus Hallie. And then you get to the fact that he's the best in basketball at pushing pace and transition. And you get to the fact that he's this phenomenal off-ball player who will constantly stress defenses there and is a great shooter off the catch and makes some of these great 0.5-second decisions in the offense. And they've just lost, like, the trigger for all of their offensive greatness. So, you know, I like Nembhard and McConnell. They're scrappy defensively, and they can play with pace offensively, especially TJ McConnell, and both of these guys can generate paint touches. But when it comes to, like, their scoring, both of them have major limitations. Personally, I am not banking on Andrew Nembhard just magically replicating his pull-up and three-point shooting that we see from him in the playoffs for an entire regular season, when this guy has actually been a pretty bad regular season three-point shooter, especially last year, and then he somehow just, like, turns that around in the playoffs. I don't know. I think he's got some major limitations as a scorer, and he's a decent passer, solid passer, but not nearly the passer that Hallie is, obviously. So I just think there's a huge downgrade in terms of your offensive play from your guards. And you're missing the guy who sets everything in motion and is the entire identity of this team and made them great at, like, what was their overwhelming strength. The defense improved last year, but the Pacers were who they were because their offense was better than anybody. If you look at the minutes that Siakam played, Logan, without Hallie or Turner on the floor last year, Pacers had a 110 offensive rating, 10 points worse than their offensive rating with Hallie on the floor. It's a massive, massive drop-off. The offensive swing that he creates for this team, I mean, it's just so huge. And so if you look at the last 2 years, they're 11-11 without Hallie, so that would justify your 500 prediction. But now when you take out Turner too, and the center situation gets so much worse, I just think they've lost really what makes them a very good basketball team. And their depth is still solid, but the sort of depth that they were really hanging their hat on last year, like that gets downgraded when everybody else's responsibilities are now slotted up because you've lost two of your three best players. I think that their depth has taken a hit. I just think, yeah, the defense will be mediocre. It'll be okay. I think the offense is going to be below average. Hallie makes that much of a difference, in my opinion.
I mean, this team was also really good at turning defense into offense last season. If you think they're going to be good on defense, you think they take a hit in transition as well?
I think they're going to be fine on defense. I think that they will be an above average transition offense, but that is coming from with Hallie being like arguably the best transition offense we've seen since the 7-second or less Suns. So I think that there's going to be a significant drop off there, both in transition and in the half court.
Yeah, I don't know. I really believe in McConnell and Nembhard. Obviously, not to supplement the entire value of Tyrese Haliburton as an offensive engine, because I think he's one of the most special players on the planet. I think he's a top 15 player before we saw him, unfortunately get injured in Game 7. But I believe in McConnell and Nembhard to get to the offense to a decent level. I think Ben Mathurin takes a little bit of a leap. I think Siakam's really solid. I like the depth. I really like Carlisle. They're just like middle of the road to me. That's why I haven't gone 500, man. I think they're really just solid. And I don't know. I think they'll end up.
Oh boy, Logan. Oh boy. Andrew Nembhard, when he's been on the court without Tyrese Haliburton last year, 107.8 offensive rating
right,
for the Indiana
bro.
Pacers.
They'll be all right.
Will they?
They'll be all right.
I mean, I've got them winning 35 games. I don't think they're going to be terrible.
TJ McConnell, bro.
TJ's a really good bench point guard, man, but like everything changes when you take your best player and one of the best offensive players in basketball out of it. Because like what I like about Indiana is they've got a lot of good complementary offensive players. And I would say that even about Siakam. And I really like Siakam. I mean, he's a great mismatch attacker. He is so versatile as a scorer. He is not an offensive engine. He is not somebody who creates enough shots for others. He is not somebody who takes on a significant enough on-ball load as a creator to be considered that. He is meant to be an awesome number two playing off of a guy like Tyrese Haliburton who can set him up for success in all these different ways. Oh, dear God. Andrew Nembhard's true shooting percentage without Tyrese Haliburton on the floor in the regular season last year, 50. Ugh, man, I don't know. I think some people might have a little too much stock in Andrew Nembhard right now. I think that he's nice when he's like your fourth option offensively and he's a good point of attack defender. But when you're asking him to be the primary ball handler for an offense,
I think he had a really down shooting year last year. I think he's going to be a lot better.
He had a down shooting year, but also he never ever creates easy offense. Like he lives on a tough shot diet. He doesn't get to the rim. He doesn't get to the line. He takes a shit ton of mid-range jumpers. And
he's a good playmaker.
And some threes, and he shot 29% from three.
I think him and McConnell by committee are going to be good.
I think we are just going to disagree on this. I think that they are going to struggle more than you and probably most people are expecting. I think Hallie makes a bigger difference for this team than probably most. I'm extremely high on Hallie, and I really think that he was almost everything for this team offensively. And like, again, they have good pieces, but they are all dependent on playing off of him. That's what makes them the offense that they are. So I do agree with you. Mathurin is the interesting guy to watch here. I expect him to put up pretty big numbers this year. I think he has the scoring punch when you just consider the athleticism, the driving ability, the jump shooting. Even though he's not necessarily the most efficient as a jump shooter, we know that he can get up those looks at volume from beyond the arc, from the mid-range, some as a pull-up shooter. I think he can put up 20 points per game, but is it going to be an efficient 20 points per game? Is it going to be an impactful 20 points per game? That's where I'm inclined to say not really. Like, I think that he'll put up numbers, and I think that he's a talented player, but I think he is limited as a playmaker. I think that he is another guy who is missing some of that refinement as a scorer. He doesn't really have that floater game aspect to his scoring arsenal. And as I mentioned, like he can get to his spots as a pull-up jump shooter. He can get those shots up, and he shot quite well off the catch this past year, but he had an effective field goal percentage of under 40 on pull-up jumpers. That's rough, man. That's inefficient, and that has to improve. And there's just some issues with him in terms of like basketball IQ and feel and playmaking. And he's got a lot of maturing to do offensively. And here are his numbers without Tyrese Haliburton. His true shooting percentage takes almost a 6-point dip to 54 this past year. Everybody's dependent on Hallie, man. That's just the reality. Everybody that plays with Hallie is a Hallie merchant. It's just the way it is. And now none of them get to play with Hallie, and it's going to be a bummer. Shall we move on, Logan, to the Chicago Bulls? Another year in basketball mediocrity for them, where they love to be oh so much. What's your prediction?
Yeah, I don't really want to talk about the Bulls.
35 I saw a great sorrow on your face, and I thought, Logan, whatever could be so wrong? And it turns out you just don't want to talk about the Bulls.
In 47-11 seed. I think they suck.
Wow, interesting. I've got them even worse. I have them winning 32 games as my 12 seed. So what are we going to see from the Bulls this year, Logan?
Who fucking knows, man? This team's so weird. Dude, they were, I'm doing some quick maths right now.
Sure.
They were 20-42. And then they went 15-5 over their last 20 games.
So fake. So fake.
Doesn't make any. Kobe White turned into
No, it does make
Superman.
a lot of sense. No, it totally makes a lot of sense. Everybody else stopped trying, and they
stopped
said
playing
this is when
any
we
of
can
their good
save
players.
Respectability. And also, Josh Giddey just had an outlier shooting run, but yeah, that was fake as hell.
There are things that I like about the Bulls. I still like Kobe White. He is dynamic. He's a really good shooter. I like him as an offensive player. I really like Buzelis and Asenge as like building blocks of a wing future. Both of those guys are really lengthy athletes, really impactful defenders. I think like that could be a 3-4 combo of the future that is really disruptive. Buzelis, make of it what you want. Over the last 20 games, I think he was averaging like 13 points on 61% true shooting. Like he was playing really well. So, like, I can see the building blocks of their future. I'm just not that big of a Josh Giddey guy. I don't really know if he's a guy for them for the future, like an actual franchise piece. It frustrates me when people kind of just lump him in there like, oh, because he puts up the raw numbers that he does, it's like, oh, he's going to be a superstar. And I just don't agree. I think there are some fundamental flaws that come in with him that limit him from being having that kind of ceiling, specifically the scoring. Vooch, for some reason, is still on this basketball team.
Hell yeah, brother.
What didn't he have the most like pick and roll points or some shit like that last season, man?
I think so, maybe.
Something stupid. Like they traded Lonzo for Isaac Okoro. Cool, man. I don't know, dude. And what's sad is the Bulls still, as shitty as they are, have a legitimate chance to get into the play-in. They do.
Yeah.
Even at 35 games, I could see them creeping back in. I don't have it. I have them as my 11 seed, but it's definitely possible. There's no star here. I like their wing tandem for the future, but they just don't have a guy, and they still have Vooch for some reason, man. The Bulls front office is the most confusing in the sports that I consume. Out of anybody, like football, basketball, like the Bulls confuse me more than any other franchise that I consume with regular. Maybe the Jets. You know what? Mm-hmm. The Jets I will put there. The Jets and the Bulls alone on like their own little island by themselves.
It's incredible because for the Bulls, it's now lasted multiple different regimes in terms of the front office. For the Jets, I think first and foremost, you look at Woody Johnson, just ownership
and
being
Brick,
crazy.
yeah,
and him
of course.
being so meddling. Yeah, and of course, Woody and Brick Johnson, a couple of sick fucks in that family, perverted names, both of them. For the Bulls, maybe they've just been cursed by the ghost of Michael Jordan. You want to know a crazy stat, Logan, about just how incredibly slightly below average the Chicago Bulls have been? Back-to-back years, they have ranked between 18th and 21st in both offensive rating and defensive rating, and they have been exactly 20th in net rating both years. How about that, man? I mean, they are just so firmly stamped.
Bravo.
As slightly below average on both sides of the ball. I do have them dropping off a bit this year because they suck. And because I think they're actually worse than their record showed last year because they racked up wins in absolute NBA garbage time at a rate that nobody else did last year, because all that the Bulls are motivated by clearly is getting to a play-in game so they can get embarrassed in that play-in game, and then they can come back next year and again do everything they can to make a play-in game in the East. But I am projecting less of a sort of late season fluke win streak this year, and I just think that they're a bad basketball team. I'm not fooled by Josh Giddey whatsoever. Just don't like him. And look, they gave him the extension this offseason. Personally, I wouldn't have done it. I would never pay Josh Giddey. 4 years, $100 million isn't the most egregious. He wanted like north of $30 million a year, so at least they didn't give him that. But I just don't think he can be a building block for a really good team. I just think he is way too clunky as an offensive player and way too flawed. And like, yeah, yippee, he was putting numbers again in basketball garbage time last year. Before the All-Star break, he was averaging 12, 7, and 6 on 54% true shooting with a negative 6.5 plus minus per game. So the outlier shooting streak from him does not move me. No, he's been a negative impact player throughout his career. And like, this was the best year of his career. That's a low bar, though, and he just has all the same limitations. You get to an actual game that has anything resembling a playoff environment, like we saw in the play-in game for the Bulls this past year, and like, it is just so easy to exploit his offensive flaws. You really don't have to guard him out to the three-point line. Even after he had the best shooting streak of his career, he is still so unreliable there, and everybody knows it, and he just doesn't have juice on ball. He's a well below average scorer. He scored 0.8 points per pick and roll this year. That's a bad number. He's a well below average spot up and off ball player. I mean, he had a decent catch and shoot season, again, because he got hot at the end of the year, but he's not good playing off the catch still. He's a bad finisher at the rim. He still has no pull-up shooting game whatsoever. Logan, how many jump shots off the dribble do you think Josh Giddey made all of last year? This is according to Synergy. This is a quote-unquote point guard. Okay, 5. 5?
I don't know. Well, I figured, I mean, Giddey's floater is what he normally gets to. You know, that was his bread and butter.
For sure, and that's the one decent thing that he actually does have as a scorer. But no, he made 31 jumpers off the dribble, but 42% effective field goal percentage on those shots. Just terrible. So he's Josh Giddey, man. We know who he is. He's a good passer, but he does not have the ability to actually make use of that passing talent because he doesn't create advantages. He doesn't threaten defenses with his scoring in the half court because he's so limited.
The most important player to the Bulls last season was actually Kevin Huerter.
Flamethrower.
They had, let's see, the net rating swing, that is 9.4 plus, I'm doing some math again. I'm horrible at it. 4.1. 13.5, bro. A 13.5 swing in terms of net rating with Kevin Huerter on versus off, bro.
Gonna say we might need a little bit more of a sample size before we're drawing big conclusions.
Kevin Huerter's the best player on this team, bro.
It's not a high bar, I'll tell you that. So look, Josh Giddey can get you an empty 15, 7, and 7. Nobody's ever questioned his ability to do that, but is it actually conducive to winning? No.
What would
Especially
you have paid?
He sucks defensively.
Yeah, he does. That's the final component. That's a great point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is why, real quick, you get to a playing game and it's like, okay, we are so easily able to exploit his scoring limitations on offense, and then on the other side of the ball, we can put him into every action and attack him over and over again. He's not good away from the ball on offense, and he has major limitations with the ball. So what would I pay Josh Giddey? $12 million a year to be a good bench ball handler for me. That's what I think his role is in this league. That's where I think he could actually be good, because then his scoring limitations just aren't as significant, and he can push pace and he can make plays in transition, and the passing is fun. But to have him in a major role, there's just way too many major flaws with him as a basketball player.
I agree. And when I look at the outlook for this team as a future, I think that they have like maybe 2 to 3 future starters on a good team on their roster right now. And those guys would be Kobe White, Matas Buzelis, and Noah Sengay to me. I've honestly kind of been disappointed with Dosunmu to this point in his career. They signed Trey Jones in the offseason. They traded for Isaac Okoro. It's a hilarious roster, Carson. It is actually hilarious, man. let's bring in Trey
You've been
Jones.
disappointed by Io? I do like Io.
I like Io a little bit. I've been a little bit honestly, I would still like to have seen Io get more burn with the ball in his hands instead of them going out and getting giddy. Like, yeah, I've been disappointed. This team's just so comically far away.
I like Io as a complimentary guard. I mean, he didn't shoot it quite as well last year, but I do think he's a good shooter, and he's got pretty good feel. He's pretty efficient as a pick and roll player, so I like him as kind of an all-around guard, but ultimately, this team is just lacking for talent, like you said. Like, Kobe White can score. That's great, but there is not enough here for this to be even an average offense. I think that they're going to be below average on that side of the ball as they were last year. And I look at this defense and I think it's going to be really bad. I mean, they're bad everywhere defensively. Their guards defensively in the starting lineup are pretty disastrous. They're still trotting out Vooch to be your 5 defensively. And like the one spot where they do have some defensive talent is on the wings, but there's a lot of super young guys there. So ultimately, I think if you're a Chicago fan, you've probably had enough of all this for the last couple decades and you're just waiting for the miserable end or maybe the miraculous day that you stumble into the number 1 pick and you nail it. And I'm rooting for you to have that happen someday. Unfortunately, it's not possible when your team is as committed as possible to winning 30 to 40 games every single year, and that's all they want to do. I will say, though, I'm excited for Buzelis. I do think that he is by far the best asset that this team has right now. I liked him a lot as a prospect. I liked him a lot as a pick. I mean, this guy was the number 1 high school prospect, and they were able to get him 11th overall. I just think he projects very nicely into the sort of do-it-all, big forward archetype, hell of a shot-blocking wing talent, versatile defensively.
Almost a steal and a block per game when he was getting, decent burn last year, man. He's a defensive playmaker.
Yeah, the blocks per minute are pretty damn good with him, and he's versatile on that side of the ball, and he's versatile offensively. And the fact that he shot the ball pretty well is significant. Like 36% from 3 on decent volume, 81% from the free throw line. I don't think he's ever going to be somebody who's like really a volume creator with the ball in his hands, but can he do enough there? Like, will the handle get to a place where he can do some of that supplementary ball handling? I think that's totally possible. And then he's always had a high IQ offensively, really good cutter, somebody who is a good connective passer. Like, he just does a lot of things that I like on both sides of the ball. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the roster construction where that is going to shine, and he's not going to be fully refined in all these ways as a second-year player, obviously. But he is the guy who I look at in Chicago, and I'm like, hooray. At least they've got that guy. Asenge I'm not quite as high on, but at least there's two-way wing potential there. Something.
Yeah. Buzelis is the guy, though. I want to see him take a leap in terms of ball handling and off-the-dribble shooting. And I thought he got better as the year went along, but that's really what's going to determine what his ultimate ceiling is. But he's an impact winner, man, and I'm glad they were able to get him. Chicago's his hometown, too, man, was able to come back home. So
yeah,
they've at least got Buzelis.
They do at least have Buzelis, and he really did play well post-All-Star break. I mean, when they gave him more run, post-All-Star break, he was giving you 13 points per game, 59% true shooting. Like, with his defensive skill set, that's pretty good stuff, man. Asenge, interesting. He wasn't my favorite. I had him 15th on my big board. I do just sort of wonder about what his offensive game is going to look like. I do worry about him being an offensive liability in the half court because he really has no pull-up game to speak of right now. He doesn't have like the traits that I look for in an effective driver. He doesn't have like the change in pace, and I worry about the shot. I don't like the mechanics. The shot prep's been inconsistent. The results really weren't good. Free throw shooting was decent.
I like the complimentary stuff with Asenge, like the athleticism,
sure, and that's
like the transition, screening, cutting, closeout attacking. And I really do like him. Like, he's a versatile defender. He's a high IQ guy. He's not the most skilled, but I think he's a very high IQ guy.
No, he's got really good defensive versatility. He's got really good length. He'll play physically. He's a decent secondary rim protector, pretty good for being his size. And then offensively, like, he can use his athleticism as a cutter, as a transition finisher. He gets to the line a shit ton. I like his frame. There's a lot just in terms of like, oh, if these offensive things develop, then you'd be like, yeah, Noah Senge will be a really good player. I'm just less confident in those offensive things developing maybe than other people are, because I just don't see a lot of indicators that I really like there. But we'll see what he does. I'm not expecting too much from him this year, because I think if his offense is ever going to come along, it's not going to be as a rookie. Like, it'll probably be rough for him offensively, but maybe he can inject a little bit of life with his defense and athleticism, and that could be something. But Buzelis, I definitely own some stock in him, and that's really all I'm excited to see with the Chicago Bulls this year. So, on that note, Logan, one division left, baby, and then we got a few more special shows before the NBA season gets started, but it's just around the corner, man. 2 freaking weeks until it all gets started. I mean, preseason is going on right now. So hope everybody is excited as we are, and hope that you continue to join us for our NBA journey. It's really just getting started right now. It'll be all on our YouTube channel with all of our full-length episodes and our video essays and video breakdowns that we do about the NBA and the NFL. And, of course, all of our full shows about the NFL are also on our YouTube channel and across all audio platforms. You can also follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and all of our short-form trivia content. And you can also join our Discord if you want to chat with the gang and be part of our community over there. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.